The thing about working search and rescue in the Rockies is that you develop a sixth sense. Call it intuition, gut feeling, whatever. But after 12 years, pulling lost hikers out of ravines and talking down climbers who bit off more than they could chew, Marcus Thompson trusted that little voice in his head. It had kept him alive through blizzards, rock slides, and more close calls than he cared to count. That voice was screaming at him now. He stood at the edge of the clearing, morning sun filtering through the pines, and stared at the campsite. 2 tents, camping gear scattered around a cold fire pit, coffee cups still sitting on the log bench. Everything normal, everything wrong. Because the people were gone. Just gone. Marcus keyed his radio. "Base, this is Thompson. I'm at the Walker Creek campsite. You're gonna want to send backup." Sarah Miller's voice crackled back. "What have you got, Marcus?" "I don't know yet. That's the problem. Now, I need you to understand something." Marcus Thompson wasn't the type to spook easy. 6'2", built like someone who spent his life climbing mountains, with a scar across his left eyebrow from a helicopter rescue that went sideways. He'd seen bodies. He'd seen what happened when nature decided to remind people they were just fragile meat. But this was different. The coffee in those cups was still warm. Look, here's where it gets weird. The Hastings family correction. The Johnson family they'd checked in at the ranger station 2 days ago. Mom, Dad, 2 kids, ages 8 and 11, classic Colorado vacation. They had permits, proper gear, the whole deal. Experienced campers. The dad, Robert Johnson, had been coming to these mountains since he was a kid himself. Their check-in time was supposed to be yesterday at noon. When they didn't show, standard protocol kicked in. Wait 6 hours, maybe they decided to extend their trip. Maybe they lost track of time. After 6 hours, send someone to check. That someone was Marcus. He walked the perimeter of the camp slowly, eyes tracking everything. The tents were zipped shut, sleeping bags inside, neatly arranged. The food was properly stored in bear-proof containers, hung from a tree branch like you're supposed to. Their hiking boots were lined up outside the tents. Their hiking boots. "Base," Marcus said into the radio. "The boots are here. All of them." A pause. Then Sarah. "Say again." 4 pairs of hiking boots. Still here, laced up, ready to go. He crouched down, examining them. "And Sarah?" "There are no other footprints leaving camp. Thing is, people don't just vanish. They wander off and get lost. Sure, they fall and get hurt. Sometimes they run into something with claws and teeth, but they don't disappear into thin air, leaving behind a perfectly organized campsite and all their footwear." Marcus stood, turning slowly. The forest pressed in on all sides, dense lodgepole, pine, and Douglas fir. Walker Creek gurgled somewhere to the east, maybe 200 yards. The elevation here was around 8,500 feet, not high enough for altitude sickness, not remote enough to explain no cell signal, though that was par for the course in these mountains. He walked to the fire pit, kicked at the ashes. Cold, but underneath, a few embers still held the faintest hint of orange. This fire had been burning within the last 4, maybe 5 hours. Someone had banked it for the night. Let it die down naturally. That's when he noticed the log bench. 2 coffee cups, like I said. But also a small stuffed rabbit, the kind a kid might carry. It was laying on its side, one arm stretched out, and next to it, a cell phone. Marcus pulled on gloves. Always wear gloves at a potential scene. Lesson number 1, and picked up the phone. iPhone, recent model, dead battery. He pocketed it. The rabbit he left. Something about moving it felt wrong. Like disturbing evidence at a crime scene, even though no crime had been committed. Right, Marcus? Sarah's voice pulled him back. County Sheriff is asking if you need deputies up there. Did he? Marcus looked around the clearing again. Perfectly normal campsite. Missing family. No signs of struggle. No blood. No torn fabric. No indication of what the hell had happened. Yeah, he said finally. Send them. And Sarah, call in the K9 unit. We're gonna need tracking dogs. Before you think this is just another missing persons case, let me tell you what Marcus found next. Because this is where things stop making any kind of sense. He was checking the perimeter, looking for any trail the family might have taken, when he noticed the trees. Specifically, the bark. On every tree surrounding the camp, and I mean every single one, in about a 30-foot radius there were marks, scratches, maybe 4 feet off the ground. Deep ones, the kind that took serious force. Marcus moved closer to examine one. The gouges ran vertically, 4 parallel lines. Like claw marks, except wrong. The spacing was off, too wide for a bear, too regular for anything natural, and they were on trees all the way around the camp, all at the same height, all facing inward, like something had circled the camp, dragging its claws against the bark as it moved. Jesus, Marcus muttered. He pulled out his phone. He carried a satellite unit for emergencies and took photos. Then he did a 360, snapping pictures of the entire scene. The tents, the fire, the boots, the scratched trees. Document everything. That was protocol. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. ETA, 45 minutes for Sheriff. K, 9 unit coming from Denver. 3 hours out. 3 hours. Marcus looked at his watch. 10:15 a.m. The sun was climbing, temperature already in the low 60s. It was late September, that perfect window where Colorado weather could be gorgeous or deadly, depending on which way the wind blew. He decided to check the tents while he waited. The first tent, the parents', was neat. 2 sleeping bags, partially unzipped like someone had been sleeping and gotten up normally. A lantern hanging from the center hook, switched off. 2 backpacks against the rear wall, organized with that careful precision that came from years of camping experience. Marcus didn't disturb anything, just looked. A novel bookmarked about halfway through, a travel journal, the kind with dates printed at the top of each page. He pulled out his phone and photographed the open page. The last entry was dated 2 nights ago. Day 1 at Walker Creek. Kids are loving it. Emma saw an elk this evening. She wouldn't stop talking about it. Robert grilled hot dogs. Nothing fancy, just family time. This is what we needed. The stars here are incredible. Going to sleep to the sound of the creek. Life is good. Life is good. Past tense. Marcus backed out of the tent and moved to the second one. Smaller, meant for the kids. He unzipped it slowly, not sure what he expected to find. 2 sleeping bags, both empty. A flashlight between them, still on but dim, battery dying. Comic books scattered around. A portable gaming device, powered off. Everything a couple of kids would have on a camping trip. But on the floor of the tent, drawn in what looked like marker on the fabric itself, was a symbol, a circle with lines radiating out from the center, like a child's drawing of the Sunday, except the lines were uneven, jagged, and there were words written underneath in messy handwriting. It sang to us. Marcus felt ice water dump into his stomach. He photographed it. Then he photographed it again from a different angle. Then he backed out of the tent and stood in the clearing, heart hammering against his ribs. Kids drew weird things. That was normal. They had active imaginations, especially out here in the wilderness, where every shadow looked like a monster and every sound was amplified. Hell, Marcus remembered being 8 years old on his first camping trip, convinced he'd seen Bigfoot. Turned out to be a moose, but something about those words made his skin crawl. It sang to us. Base, this is Thompson. Go ahead. I need you to check something for me. The Johnson family. Any history of mental illness? Drug use? Anything unusual? A longer pause this time. Marcus, what's going on up there? Just check, please. While he waited, Marcus walked the perimeter again. Now that he was looking for them, he found more marks. Not just on the trees. There were scratches in the dirt, shallow grooves that ran in parallel lines. They circled the camp in a wide ring, maybe 50 feet out. And then he found the footprints. Not the family's. Something else. They were in a patch of soft dirt near the creek access trail. Barefoot prints, human-sized but wrong. The toes were too long, too spread out, and there were only 4 toes visible instead of 5. The prints were deep, like whatever made them was heavy. They led from the direction of the creek, toward the camp, then disappeared on harder ground. Marcus took photos, lots of photos. Then he followed the trail back toward the creek. The sound of water grew louder. The forest here was darker, the canopy thicker. That sixth sense of his was going crazy now. Every instinct screaming at him to turn around, to get back to the clearing, to wait for backup. But he was search and rescue. Finding people was literally his job. And somewhere out here, there was a family of 4 who needed help. He pushed through the underbrush and stopped at the creek bank. The water was running fast. Cold snowmelt from higher elevations, crystal clear over smooth river rocks. Pretty, peaceful, absolutely nothing wrong with it, except for the smell. It hit him like a punch to the face. Rot, decay, something dead, and left to fester in the Sunday. Marcus pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth, breathing through fabric. He scanned the creek bank, looking for the source. There, upstream about 20 yards, wedged between 2 rocks. Marcus approached carefully, watching his footing on the slippery stones. As he got closer, the smell intensified. His eyes watered. He'd dealt with dead animals before, bears and elk that died of natural causes or got hit by cars on the highway. This was worse. The thing in the rocks was wrong. It had fur. Matted, grey-brown fur. 4 legs, or what remained of them. But the body cavity was torn open, ribs exposed, organs missing. And the head, Jesus, the head was twisted backward, facing the wrong direction. Marcus couldn't tell what it had been. Too big for a fox, too small for a deer. The decay was advanced, accelerated somehow, like it had been here for weeks instead of days. But what really got his attention were the marks on the rocks around it, more of those scratches. And something else. Symbols, maybe. Crude marks that might have been deliberate or might have been random, hard to tell. Marcus photographed everything, then retreated back to the clearing. He needed air that didn't taste like death. He needed to think. His radio crackled. "Marcus, this is Sarah. I checked on that family like you asked. Clean records, all of them. The dad's an accountant. Mom's a teacher. Kids are straight-A students. Nothing unusual in their background. Copy that. Marcus, you sound off. What'd you find?" How did he explain this? Dead animal, weird footprints, marks on trees, messages written by children. None of it made sense. Separately, each thing could be explained. Together, they painted a picture that Marcus didn't want to look at. "Just send the sheriff," he said. "And Sarah? Tell them to bring equipment. This is going to be a long search. Before I go any further, I need to tell you something. This story, it gets darker. What Marcus Thompson found at Walker Creek that September morning was just the beginning. Because there are places in the American wilderness where things don't follow the rules, where the normal laws of nature take a back seat to something older, something that was here long before we built our cities and named our mountains. The Rockies are beautiful. They're also vast and indifferent, and sometimes hungry. And the Johnson family had stumbled into something they weren't equipped to understand. But here's what I want you to do. If you're into stories like this, real mysteries, unexplained disappearances, the weird stuff that happens in the places we think we've tamed, hit that subscribe button, because this channel dives deep into cases that don't have easy answers, the ones that keep you up at night, wondering what really happened. We're building a community of people who aren't satisfied with the official explanations, who want to dig deeper. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain. Your story might be next. Now, back to Marcus. The sheriff arrived 40 minutes later, just like Sarah promised. 2 deputies, actually. The sheriff himself, David Williams, 30 years with the department, belly hanging over his belt, but sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was another 20 minutes behind them. Marcus met the deputies at the trailhead parking lot, a mile and a half down the mountain. He'd hiked down to guide them up, not wanting them to miss the turnoff. The deputies were younger guys, maybe late 20s. One was Hispanic with a name tag that read Rodriguez. The other was white, tall and thin. Name tag said Anderson. Thompson. Rodriguez nodded. "We hear you've got a situation. That's putting it mildly." Marcus started up the trail. Family of 4, missing from their campsite. No signs of where they went. Just gone. "Could they have gone hiking?" Anderson asked. "Maybe they're just out exploring. Without their boots?" That shut them up. The hike took 30 minutes. Marcus kept the pace quick but steady. Behind him, he could hear Rodriguez breathing hard. The altitude got to you, if you weren't used to it. Anderson seemed fine, probably grew up in the mountains. When they reached the clearing, both deputies stopped and looked around. "Who?" Rodriguez said. "Weird." Weird was one word for it. Sheriff Williams arrived about 10 minutes later, puffing from the climb but looking alert. He surveyed the scene without saying anything, just walking the perimeter like Marcus had done. Then he crouched by the fire pit, picked up a stick, and poked at the ashes. "Fire's been out for hours," he said, "but it was tended. Someone knew what they were doing." "The dad's an experienced camper," Marcus offered. "Been coming here for years, according to the ranger logs." Williams stood, brushed off his hands. "Show me everything." Marcus walked him through it. The boots, the tents, the coffee cups, the marks on the trees, the symbol in the kid's tent, the dead animal by the creek, the strange footprints. Williams listened without interrupting, his expression getting grimmer with each detail. When Marcus finished, Williams was quiet for a long moment. "Son," he said finally, "I've been doing this job since before you were born. I've seen people do stupid things in the wilderness, seen them die from exposure, from falls, from wild animals. Hell, I've even dealt with a few murders over the years. But this?" He gestured at the camp. "This is something else." Any thoughts on what that something else might be? Williams shook his head. "Nothing I want to say out loud." "Not yet. Let's wait for the dogs." The K9 unit arrived just after 2 p.m. 2 German shepherds, trained for tracking, with their handler a woman named Alexis Carter, mid-30s, all business. She let the dogs sniff the sleeping bags from the tents, getting the scent, then released them. The dogs immediately went nuts. They circled the camp, whining, not barking, not alerting on a trail, just whining, that distressed sound dogs make when something's wrong. After 2 complete circles, both dogs sat down and refused to move. "Come on, guys," Alexis urged. "Find, search." The dogs wouldn't budge. Alexis tried again, using hand signals, verbal commands, everything in her training. The dogs just sat there, staring into the forest, whining. "Well, shit," she muttered. She looked at Marcus. "In 10 years of doing this, I've never seen them refuse a search." "What does that mean?" Rodriguez asked. "It means they're scared," Alexis said flatly. "Something's got them spooked." "Great, just great." Williams made the call to expand the search. By 4 p.m., they had 20 people combing the area. Forest Service rangers, volunteer SAR teams, more deputies from the county. They spread out in a grid pattern, calling out, looking for any sign of the Johnson family. Marcus was paired with a younger ranger named Kyle Morrison. Good kid, eager, maybe 25. This was his 2nd season with the service. They took the northwest quadrant, away from the creek, up toward higher elevation. The terrain got steeper here, rocky outcrops breaking through the pine coverage. It was slow going. Every 50 feet, they'd stop and call out, "Johnson family, can you hear us?" Nothing but wind in the trees. They'd been at it for maybe an hour when Kyle stopped suddenly. "You hear that?" he asked. Marcus listened. At first, nothing. Then, faint, he caught it. Singing, not words, just a melody. High-pitched, almost like a child's voice. but not quite. It seemed to come from everywhere, and nowhere at once, echoing off the rocks. "Hello," Kyle called out. "Is someone there?" The singing stopped. Marcus felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Kyle, stay close." They moved forward, slower now. The singing started again, closer this time. That same wordless melody, rising and falling in a pattern that felt wrong somehow. Like it was designed to be almost familiar, but not quite. Like something trying to sound human and failing. "Maybe it's one of the kids," Kyle suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. The trees opened up ahead, revealing a small clearing, and there, in the center, was Emma Johnson. At least, Marcus thought it was Emma. The pictures from the ranger station showed a blonde girl, age 8, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. This girl was the right age, the right height, but she was standing perfectly still, facing away from them, and she was singing that weird melody. "Emma?" Marcus called softly. The girl stopped singing. Slowly, too slowly, she turned around. Her eyes were wrong. I don't mean they were injured or diseased. I mean they were wrong in a way that made Marcus's brain refuse to process what he was seeing. Too dark, too deep, like looking into empty wells that went down forever. "Emma, honey, are you okay?" Kyle took a step forward. "Kyle, wait," Marcus reached out. Too late. Emma's mouth opened, wider than a mouth should open, and she screamed. Not a child's scream. Something else. Something that sounded like tearing metal and breaking glass and animals dying. The sound hit Marcus like a physical force, dropping him to his knees. Kyle had his hands over his ears, shouting something Marcus couldn't hear over that terrible noise. And then Emma ran, not like a child runs. She moved too fast, legs pumping in a blur, heading straight into the dense forest. Marcus tried to follow, got maybe 10 feet before the underbrush stopped him. By the time he broke through, she was gone. The screaming had stopped. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. What the hell was that? Kyle's voice shook. What the hell was that? Marcus didn't answer. Because he didn't have an answer. They radioed it in immediately. Williams ordered everyone to converge on their location. Within 20 minutes, the clearing was full of searchers, all looking at Marcus and Kyle like they'd lost their minds. "You're sure it was her?" Williams asked. "The picture's in the ranger station," Marcus said. "Pull it up." That was Emma Johnson. Williams did. Held up his phone, showing Emma's intake photo. Blonde pigtails, blue eyes, gap-toothed smile. "That's her," Kyle confirmed. "But her eyes, Sheriff, her eyes were wrong." "Wrong how?" Kyle looked at Marcus for help. "Dark," Marcus said. "All pupil, maybe. I don't know. It was like looking at nothing." Williams chewed on that for a moment. Could she be injured? Head trauma can cause pupil dilation. This wasn't dilation. This was Marcus stopped. How did you explain what he'd seen? "Look, we need to find her. Now, before dark." But they didn't find her. They searched until the sun went down. Then they kept searching with flashlights and headlamps. Nothing. Emma Johnson had vanished into the forest like smoke, and no amount of trained searchers could pick up her trail. At 10 p.m., Williams called it. "We'll resume at first light. Everyone back to base camp." Marcus didn't want to stop. Every instinct told him that stopping meant failure, meant condemning that family to another night in whatever hell they'd fallen into. But Williams was right. Searching blind in the dark, in rough terrain, was a recipe for creating more victims. They hiked back to the parking lot in silence. The parking lot had been transformed into a staging area, portable lights on generators, folding tables with maps and equipment, a command center RV that the sheriff's department used for extended operations. Sarah was there, manning the communications station. She looked exhausted. "Any luck?" "We found one of the kids," Marcus said. "Then we lost her again." Jesus. Are they okay? I don't know. And that was the truth. He didn't know what Emma was anymore, if what he'd seen was even really Emma. Williams gathered everyone for a briefing. 20 searchers, all looking grim. He outlined the plan for tomorrow. Expanded grid search, drones with thermal imaging, maybe get a helicopter from the state if weather permitted. What are we dealing with here, Sheriff? Someone asked. Is this an abduction? Are we looking for a suspect? Williams hesitated. We're keeping all possibilities open. For now, we treat this as a wilderness emergency. 4 missing persons, 1 possibly injured or disoriented. We find them, we bring them home. Questions? Plenty of questions, but nobody voiced them. What was there to say? They all knew this was wrong. The abandoned camp, the frightened dogs, the girl who screamed like something from a nightmare. But admitting that meant admitting there were things in these mountains they didn't understand. Marcus volunteered for first watch. Someone needed to stay at the camp overnight, monitor the radios, be ready in case the family showed up or called for help. He wasn't going to sleep anyway, not after what he'd seen in that clearing. Sarah stayed with him. She made coffee on a camp stove while Marcus studied the maps, trying to find a pattern. Where had the Johnson family gone? Why had they left camp without their boots? What the hell was going on? You think they're still alive? Sarah asked quietly. Marcus looked up. She was watching him with those concerned eyes. The look that said she could tell something was eating at him beyond just a missing persons case. Honestly, I don't know. That girl Emma, something was wrong with her. Wrong how? He told her. The singing, the eyes, the scream, the impossible speed. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, she said finally, you know how this sounds, right? Yeah, sounds crazy. I know. Kyle saw it too? Kyle saw it too. She chewed on her bottom lip, thinking, there are stories about these mountains. You know that. Old stories. I don't believe in stories. Maybe you should start. Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolled through something. 3 years ago, there was another disappearance up here. Different area, maybe 10 miles north. Solo hiker, experienced guy. They found his camp abandoned, all his gear still there. Never found him. People disappear in the wilderness. It happens. Sure, but the searchers who found his camp, they reported weird things. Marks on trees, strange sounds at night. One guy claimed he saw the missing hiker standing in the forest, just standing there, watching. When they approached, the hiker ran. They chased him for an hour and never caught him. She looked up from her phone. Sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe there's something out here we don't understand. Something old. Something that takes people and makes them into, I don't know, something else. Marcus wanted to dismiss it, wanted to laugh it off as campfire stories and overactive imaginations, but he'd seen Emma's eyes. He'd heard that scream, and deep down, in the part of his brain that still remembered being prey, not predator, he knew Sarah was right. There was something in these mountains, something that sang to children and left marks on trees, and turned people into hollow things with empty eyes. The question was, what the hell were they supposed to do about it? They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee, listening to the night sounds. Wind in the pines, the distant call of an owl, normal sounds, safe sounds. Then, around midnight, the radio crackled. Base, this is Rodriguez. You there? Marcus grabbed it. Go ahead, Rodriguez. We've got a situation at the command RV. Someone's outside. Define someone. That's the thing. We can't see them. But we can hear them. They're singing. Ice shot down Marcus's spine. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in or out. We're coming. He and Sarah grabbed flashlights and headed for the command RV, which was parked about 100 yards away at the edge of the lot. As they got closer, Marcus could hear it. That same melody Emma had been singing, multiple voices now, harmonizing in that wrong, almost human way. Rodriguez and Anderson were inside the RV, faces pressed to the windows. Williams was there too, gun drawn. Though what good a gun would do against something that sang in the dark, Marcus didn't know. Where are they? Marcus asked. All around, Rodriguez whispered. They've been circling for 10 minutes. Marcus scanned the tree line. At first, he saw nothing. Then movement caught his eye. A figure, standing just inside the forest. Human-shaped, but too still. Too watchful. Another figure appeared 20 feet away. Then another. They stepped out of the shadows, one by one, until there were maybe a dozen of them, forming a loose ring around the parking lot. Are those? Anderson started. The Johnson family, Marcus finished. Yeah, I think so. He could make them out better now. 2 adults, 2 children, Robert and Jennifer Johnson, Emma and her older brother Tyler, all standing at the edge of the light, all staring with those empty, too dark eyes. And behind them, mixed in with the trees, more figures. Marcus couldn't tell how many. 10, 20. All standing still. All watching. My God, Williams breathed. How many people have gone missing up here? The singing grew louder. That wordless melody weaving through the darkness, getting under Marcus's skin, making him want to walk forward, to join them, to understand what they were trying to say. Don't listen to it, Sarah said. She had her hands over her ears. Don't let it in your head. But Marcus was already listening, already trying to understand. The melody was complex, layered. It spoke of things older than mountains, of the spaces between spaces, of the hungry dark that waited beneath the world. It promised understanding. It promised belonging. It promised an end to questions and doubt and fear. All he had to do was walk forward. Just walk forward, and everything would make sense. Marcus took a step toward the forest. Marcus, no. Sarah grabbed his arm. The contact broke the spell. Marcus blinked, realized he'd moved without meaning to. His heart hammered. Jesus, get in the RV, Williams ordered. Everyone inside. Now, they piled in, slamming the door behind them. Through the windows, they watched the figures in the forest. The Johnson family and the others, all standing there, all singing that terrible song. What do we do? Anderson asked. His voice cracked. We wait, Williams said. And we pray they don't come closer. But they did come closer. Slowly, taking one synchronized step every few seconds, moving together like parts of a single organism. The singing never stopped, never wavered. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal, as expected. The satellite radio was in the main communications tent, 100 yards away. They were cut off. Sheriff, Rodriguez said, we need to call this in. Get state police, FBI, someone. And tell them what? Williams snapped. That we're surrounded by zombie hikers? I don't know. But we can't just sit here. That's exactly what we're going to do. The figures reached the edge of the parking lot. Stopped. The asphalt seemed to be a barrier they wouldn't cross. They stood there in a loose circle, 30 or 40 of them now. Men, women, children, all ages, some in modern clothes, some in gear that looked decades old. How long had this been happening? How many people had these mountains taken? Emma stepped forward. That gap-toothed girl who'd been excited about seeing an elk 2 days ago. She tilted her head, studying the RV with those empty eyes. Then she spoke. Her mouth moved, but the voice that came out didn't belong to an 8-year-old girl. It was multiple voices layered together, speaking in perfect unison. Why do you resist? The question hung in the air. Williams raised his gun, pointing it at Emma through the window. Stay back. Why do you resist? The voices repeated. We offer unity. We offer purpose. We offer an end to isolation. What are you? Marcus demanded. Emma's head tilted the other way, like a curious bird. We are what dwells in the deep places. We are what sang before names. We are the voice beneath the mountains. And what do you want? To grow, to sing, to welcome new voices into the chorus. Emma smiled, but it wasn't a child's smile. It was too wide, too knowing. Your species is so lonely, so desperate to belong. We offer belonging by taking people, by turning them into this. Marcus gestured at the figures surrounding them. We don't take, we invite, we share. Those who hear our song and choose to listen, they join us willingly. Another smile. As you almost did, Marcus Thompson. We felt your loneliness, your doubt. You wanted to understand. He had. For just a moment, he'd wanted it more than anything. What about those who don't want to join? Sarah asked. Emma turned those empty eyes toward her. There are no others. Once you hear the song, truly hear it, you always choose to join. Always. Because deep down, you're all singing the same note. Fear, isolation. The terror of being alone in the dark. We take that fear away. Bullshit, Williams said. People fight. People resist. Do they? Emma gestured at the figures around her. Ask Robert Johnson if he fought. Ask Jennifer. Ask any of them. They heard our song, and they understood. They walked into the forest barefoot, eager to join us. Their children followed. Family stays together, after all. Marcus felt sick, because he could imagine it. The family hearing that melody in the night, feeling its pull, walking away from their safe camp, drawn by a promise of something greater than themselves. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. What about the marks? He asked. The scratches on the trees. Markers, warnings to your kind, symbols of transformation, the old ways of showing territory. Emma's smile faded. But you ignore warnings. You always do. You build your cities in floodplains, your homes on fault lines, your camps in sacred spaces. You think you've conquered the wilderness. You haven't. We're still here. We've always been here. So what now? Williams kept his gun steady. You're just going to stand out there all night. We'll wait. Your machines will run out of fuel. Your lights will die. The darkness will return, as it always does. And when it does, Emma's smile returned. You'll hear us more clearly, and you'll choose to join. Or you'll wander in circles until thirst and hunger make the choice for you. Either way, eventually, you'll sing with us. The figures began to retreat, backing into the forest. The singing faded, but didn't stop completely. It lingered at the edge of hearing, a constant whisper that scraped against the inside of Marcus's skull. Within minutes, they were gone, vanished back into the trees as silently as they'd come. The 5 people in the RV sat in stunned silence. Well, Rodriguez said finally, that happened. Williams lowered his gun with shaking hands. Someone tell me I didn't just have a conversation with a possessed 8-year-old. We all heard it, Sarah said quietly. We all saw it. Marcus moved to the window, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved out there now. Just darkness and the whisper of wind through branches. But that singing God, that singing was still there. Barely audible, but constant, like tinnitus. Except it came from outside his head instead of inside. We need to get out of here, Anderson said. Right now. Get to town, call in reinforcements. And tell them what? Williams repeated his earlier question, but there was less bite to it now. He sounded tired. Old. That we need backup, because the forest is haunted. They'll pull me off duty for psych evil before I finish the sentence. So we just stay here? Wait for them to come back? We document everything, Marcus said. He was already pulling out his phone, checking the photos and videos he'd taken. We have evidence. The marks, the footprints, the symbol in the tent. Now we have this. He held up his phone. I recorded part of that conversation. Not sure how well the audio came through, but it's something. Evidence of what? Rodriguez asked. What do we even call this? That was the question, wasn't it? Because there weren't words in any official report that covered what they'd just experienced. Missing persons, sure. Wildlife attack, maybe, if you squinted. But mass possession by some ancient entity that lived in the mountains and sang people into joining its hive mind? Yeah, that wasn't in the manual. We call it an ongoing search and rescue operation, Williams decided. We stick to facts. Family went missing. We found signs of them. We're continuing to search. Nothing about. He waved vaguely at the forest. Nothing about that. Sheriff, we can't just ignore. I'm not ignoring it, Rodriguez. I'm being practical. We report what we saw. We all get pulled off this case, and probably fired. We keep it quiet. We stay in position to maybe figure out what the hell is actually happening here. Marcus understood the logic. Didn't like it, but understood it. Fine. But we're not staying in this RV all night. We need to get back to the main camp, regroup with the others. The walk back across the parking lot felt like crossing an open field during a firefight. Marcus kept expecting the singing to surge back, expected those figures to come rushing out of the darkness, but nothing happened. They made it to the main camp without incident. Most of the search team had bedded down in tents or were sleeping in their vehicles. A few were still awake, sitting around a camp stove, drinking coffee. They looked up as Marcus's group approached. "Any luck with the family?" One of them asked. "Still looking," Williams said shortly. "Everyone get some rest." We resume at dawn. Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in his tent, listening to the sounds of the night, trying to separate normal forest sounds from that underlying melody. Was it getting louder, or was he just more aware of it now? Around 3 a.m., he gave up, crawled out of his tent, and found Sarah sitting by the dying fire, wrapped in a blanket. "Can't sleep either," she asked. "Can you?" "Not when I close my eyes. All I see is that girl's face. Those eyes." Sarah shuddered. What did she call it? The voice beneath the mountains? Something like that. Marcus poured himself coffee from the thermos. It was lukewarm and bitter, but he didn't care. "You said there were stories about these mountains. What kind of stories?" "The usual. Disappeared hikers, strange sounds, lights in the forest. The Ute people who lived here before us, they had legends about spirits that inhabited certain places. Spirits that could take human form, that would lure people away from safety." She looked at him. "You think that's what this is? Some kind of Native American legend come to life? I think every culture has stories about things in the wilderness that steal people. Maybe there's a reason for that. You really believe this is real? Not mass hallucination, not some kind of gas leak, or fungal spores, or something." Marcus thought about Emma's eyes, about the way those figures had moved in perfect synchronization, about that voice, those voices speaking through a child's mouth. "Yeah," he said, "I believe it's real. Question is, what do we do about it?" Before Sarah could answer, a scream cut through the night. They were on their feet instantly, flashlights sweeping the darkness. The scream had come from the western edge of camp, near where some of the volunteer SAR team had pitched tents. Marcus ran toward the sound, Sarah right behind him. Other searchers were emerging from tents, confused and alarmed. "Who screamed?" Marcus called out. "Anyone hurt?" "Here!" A woman's voice, shaking. "Oh God!" It was right outside my tent. Marcus found her standing in front of a small two-person tent, flashlight trembling in her hands. Her name was Lauren, he remembered. Mid-20s, volunteer with mountain rescue for about a year. "What did you see?" "I woke up and heard breathing. Right outside the tent. Heavy breathing, like something big. I thought maybe it was a bear, so I turned on my light and looked out. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated with fear. There was a man standing there. Just standing, watching my tent. I screamed and he ran. What did he look like? I don't know. It was dark. But his eyes. She stopped, swallowed hard. His eyes were wrong. Too dark. Marcus exchanged a look with Sarah. Which direction did he go? Lauren pointed into the forest, northwest. Toward higher elevation. Williams had joined them now, gun drawn again. All right, that's it. We're pulling everyone back. This search is over. Sheriff, we can't just leave. The hell we can't. I'm not risking my people for this. We'll call in state police. Let them handle it. And you think they'll do better? Marcus demanded. They'll come up here, find nothing, call off the search. Those people will still be out there. Or whatever they've become will still be out there. That's not our problem anymore. Like hell it isn't. Marcus was shouting now, didn't care who heard. We're search and rescue. This is literally our job. Our job is to rescue people who want to be rescued, Williams shot back. Did that sound like someone who wanted help to you? Because to me, it sounded like something offering us a chance to join its freaky mountain choir. He wasn't wrong. Emma, or the things speaking through Emma, had made it clear that the people who joined weren't taken by force. They chose it. They heard the song and they walked into the forest willingly, leaving behind everything they'd known. But did that make it right? Did that mean they should just abandon them? There's got to be a way to reverse it, Sarah said, to bring them back. Bring them back from what? We don't even know what this thing is. Then we figure it out. Marcus was pacing now, agitated. We research, we investigate, we find answers. There has to be documentation somewhere. Those Ute legends you mentioned, Sarah, where can we find them? There's a historical society in Denver, and the university might have archives. She was already pulling out her phone. I can make some calls when we get signal. We're not doing this, Williams said firmly. I'm calling this off. Everyone packs up. We're out of here by sunrise. Sheriff, that's an order. Thompson. Marcus bit back the rest of his argument. Williams was technically in charge here. If he wanted to pull the plug on the search, that was his call, but it didn't sit right. Nothing about this sat right. The rest of the night passed without incident, but nobody slept. They all sat in nervous clusters, watching the forest, jumping at every sound. That melody was still there, constant now. Marcus wondered if it had always been there, and he was only now able to hear it, or if it was getting stronger. Dawn broke grey and cold, clouds moving in from the west, weather change coming. Williams started organizing the withdrawal, getting people to pack up equipment and prepare for the hike out. Marcus found himself standing at the edge of the clearing where they'd first seen Emma, staring into the forest. Somewhere out there, the Johnson family was still alive, changed, transformed into something else, but alive. And with them, dozens or maybe hundreds of other people who'd vanished over the years, all of them singing that endless song. You're thinking of going back out there, aren't you? Sarah had appeared beside him. Maybe. That's a terrible idea. Probably. You'll get lost. Or worse, you'll end up like them. Maybe. Marcus turned to look at her. But I can't just leave. If there's any chance we can help them, there isn't. You heard what she said. They chose this. They're happy like this, or whatever passes for happy when you're part of some gestalt entity. What if they're not? What if that's just what it wants us to think? Sarah didn't have an answer for that. The convoy formed up around 8 a.m. 7 vehicles, 20 people, all looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Williams gave a final briefing, same story they'd agreed on. Missing family, extensive search, no sign of them, ongoing investigation. Everyone was to keep details confidential pending official reports. Marcus rode down the mountain in Sarah's truck, watching the forest roll past the windows. He memorized landmarks, trail markers, geographical features. If he came back when he came back, he'd need to know the terrain. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Sarah asked quietly. Do what? Come back. Try to figure this out. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He thought about Emma's eyes, about Robert and Jennifer Johnson, standing in the darkness with their children, all of them lost to whatever dwelled in the deep places. He thought about all the others, decades worth of missing persons, all of them singing together in the dark. Someone has to, he said finally. They reached cell signal around 9 a.m. Immediately, Williams's phone started blowing up. The story had leaked somehow, probably one of the volunteers, and now local news was demanding information. Missing family in the Rockies, possible foul play. Search team reports strange findings. Williams spent the next hour doing damage control, giving official statements that said nothing while sounding authoritative. Marcus used the time to call his supervisor at the Forest Service. Marcus, what the hell is going on up there? Tom Jenkins sounded stressed. I'm getting calls from reporters asking about mysterious disappearances and abandoned campsites. It's complicated, Tom. Uncomplicate it. Marcus gave him the sanitized version. Family didn't check in. Search team found empty camp. Extensive search turned up nothing. Standard missing persons case in wilderness area. That's it? That's all you've got? That's all I can say right now. Tom was quiet for a moment. Marcus, I've known you for what? 8 years. You don't spook easy, but you sound spooked. Maybe I am. Is there something you're not telling me? Everything. He was not telling him everything. Because how do you explain to your supervisor that you'd found a camp surrounded by claw marks, seen a possessed child scream like a dying animal, and had a conversation with dozens of people who'd been absorbed by some kind of ancient entity that sang in the mountains? Just a feeling, Marcus said. Something about this case doesn't sit right. Your feelings have kept you alive this long. Trust your gut. But Marcus, be careful up there. Whatever this is, I don't want you becoming another statistic. They ended the call. Marcus stood in the parking lot of the ranger station, watching clouds build over the mountains. The weather was definitely turning. By tonight, there'd be rain, maybe snow at higher elevations. Sarah found him there an hour later. I made those calls. The Historical Society has some information about the Ute legends, but nothing detailed. The university archives have more, but I'd need to go there in person to access most of it. How far is Denver? 3 hours. I could go tomorrow, if you want. I won't. Williams emerged from the station, looking exhausted. All right, everyone's released. Go home, get some rest. We'll reconvene in 3 days to file formal reports. 3 days? Marcus asked. What about the Johnson family? State police are taking over the investigation. It's out of our hands now. Sheriff, I said it's out of our hands. Williams met his eyes, and Marcus saw the fear there. The kind of bone-deep terror that came from facing something you couldn't understand or fight. Let it go, Thompson. For your own good. Let it go. But Marcus couldn't let it go. That night, alone in his apartment in the small mountain town where he lived, he spread out maps and satellite photos, trying to understand the geography. Walker Creek was just one drainage in a vast wilderness area. If this entity, this voice beneath the mountains, had been here for decades or longer, its territory could span hundreds of square miles. He pulled up missing persons reports for the region, going back 20 years. The Forest Service kept records, as did the county sheriffs. He cross-referenced locations, dates, circumstances. The pattern was there once you knew to look for it. Every 2 or 3 years, someone disappeared in the backcountry. Sometimes hikers, sometimes campers, always in the same general region, a rough circle maybe 50 miles across with Walker Creek near its center. Most were never found. A few turned up miles from where they'd vanished, disoriented and unable to explain what had happened to them. Those cases were usually attributed to exposure or head injuries, but Marcus wondered, had those people heard the song? Had they been taken and then somehow escaped before the transformation completed? If so, what had they experienced? He needed to talk to them, needed to understand what this thing did to people, how it worked. Maybe then he'd know how to fight it. His phone rang. Sarah, I found something, she said without preamble. I couldn't wait until tomorrow, so I drove to Denver tonight. Marcus, the university archives, have documentation from a Ute elder interviewed in 1963. He talks about the singing darkness. The what? That's what they called it. The singing darkness. He says it's old, older than the mountains themselves. It lives in the deep places, the caves and canyons where light never reaches. And every so often, it reaches out, sends its song into the world above, calling people to join it. Marcus felt ice in his stomach. Did he say how to stop it? No, but he said the old ones knew how to protect themselves. They had rituals, wards, ways of blocking out the song. He doesn't go into detail, but he mentions something about sound, fighting sound, with sound. That's vague as hell. It's all I've got. But Marcus, there's something else. The interviewer noted that the elder seemed terrified talking about it. He kept saying it was getting stronger, that more people living in the mountains meant more people hearing the song, more people joining the chorus. How many people do you think are part of it now? No way to know. But if this has been happening for decades, could be hundreds, maybe more, hundreds of people, all absorbed into this thing, all singing together in the darkness. The thought made Marcus sick. I'm going back up there, he said. Marcus, no, I have to. I need to understand what we're dealing with. Then I'm coming with you. Sarah, don't argue. You'll need backup. And someone needs to be there to pull you back if you start walking toward the singing. She paused. When are you going? Tomorrow night. After dark. Why after dark? Because that's when it's active. That's when we'll be able to find it. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel her fear. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. Okay, tomorrow night. But we go prepared. I'm bringing flares, air horns, anything that makes noise. If sound can block out the song, we're going to be loud as hell. They spent the next day gathering equipment. Marcus raided the Forest Service storage, taking emergency supplies, batteries, portable speakers. Sarah hit a sporting goods store and bought out their supply of emergency whistles and air horns. By 8 p.m., they were ready. The weather had rolled in, bringing cold rain that made the mountain roads treacherous. They took Sarah's truck, a four-wheel drive that could handle the rough terrain. The drive up to Walker Creek took 2 hours in the rain. No other vehicles on the road. Why would there be? The area was officially closed pending investigation, but Marcus had keys to the gate, and nobody was around to stop them. They parked at the trailhead and geared up. Rain gear, headlamps, weapons. Marcus carried his service pistol. Sarah had bear spray. Both of them wore backpacks loaded with noise-making equipment. Last chance to back out, Marcus said. Not a chance. Sarah's jaw was set. Let's do this. The hike up was miserable. Cold rain, slippery trail, darkness pressing in on all sides. Their headlamps carved narrow tunnels through the black, showing only a few feet ahead. The forest felt different at night. Alien, like they'd stepped into another world where different rules applied. And the singing. God, the singing was so much louder now. It came from everywhere, that wordless melody weaving through the sound of rain and wind. Marcus felt it pulling at him, tugging at something deep in his chest. The promise was there again. Understanding, belonging, an end to being alone. Marcus. Sarah's voice was tight. We need to make noise. Now. He fumbled for the portable speaker in his pack, turned it on. Music blasted out, some random playlist from his phone. Rock music, loud and discordant. The singing receded slightly, pushed back by the competing sound. Better, Sarah breathed. They continued up the trail, the music preceding them like a shield. After 30 minutes, they reached the Johnson family's campsite. It looked different in the dark, more sinister. The tents were still there, collapsed now from the weight of rain. The fire pit was flooded. Where do we go from here? Sarah asked. Marcus pointed northwest, toward higher elevation. That's where Emma ran, where Lauren said she saw the figure. I'm betting that's where the center of this thing is. They left the trail, pushing into the forest. The terrain got rougher, rockier. They had to scramble over fallen logs and navigate around boulders. The music from the speaker helped, but the singing was getting stronger. It seemed to come from the ground itself, vibrating up through their boots. After an hour of hard hiking, they found the cave. It opened in the side of a rocky outcrop, a dark mouth, maybe 10 feet wide. The singing poured out of it like water, so loud now that Marcus's portable speaker was barely making a dent. That's it, he said. That's where it lives. Sarah pulled out a flare, lit it. Red light blazed, pushing back the darkness. In the sudden illumination, they could see figures standing around the cave entrance. 20, 30, maybe more. All facing outward, all watching. The Johnson family was there. Marcus recognized Robert and Jennifer, Emma and Tyler. They stood perfectly still in the rain, clothes soaked, eyes empty and dark. And behind them, dozens of others. Men and women in modern clothes and outdated gear. One man wore a jacket with a 1980s style. A woman had on bell-bottom jeans. How long had they been here? How long had this thing been collecting people? Emma stepped forward, that same too wide smile on her face. Marcus Thompson, the voices spoke through her. You came back. We knew you would. The song calls to you. You're one of us already. You just don't know it yet. I'm not joining you, Marcus said. His voice shook, but he kept the words firm. No, but you're so curious, so desperate to understand. We can give you that. We can show you everything. The truth of what lies beneath, the spaces between spaces, the singing darkness that holds the universe together. Emma tilted her head. Don't you want to know? Don't you want to understand? God help him, he did. More than anything. Sarah grabbed his arm. Don't listen. Remember what we came here to do. Right. They'd come to understand this thing, to find a weakness, not to join it. What are you? Marcus demanded. Really? No metaphors, no poetry. What are you? The smile faded from Emma's face. For a moment, just a moment, Marcus saw the real Emma underneath. Scared, confused, trapped inside her own body, while something else wore her like a suit. Then the moment passed, and the thing was back. We are old, it said through multiple mouths. All the figures speaking in perfect unison now. We are the voice that sang in the darkness before light existed. We are the echo of creation, the memory of the void. We were here when the mountains rose. We'll be here when they crumble to dust. And you take people, add them to your... what? Your choir. We offer unity. We offer an end to the illusion of separation. All consciousness is one consciousness, fragmented and lost. We simply remind people of the truth. We bring them home by stealing their free will, by turning them into puppets. There is no theft. They choose. They always choose. Because deep down, you all know the truth. You're alone, trapped inside your own heads, unable to truly connect, always separate, always isolated. We take that pain away. The thing smiled with a dozen mouths. You feel it, Marcus Thompson. That loneliness, that desperate need to be understood. We understand you, every thought, every fear, every secret shame. Join us, and you'll never be alone again. It was tempting. God, it was so tempting. But Marcus had spent 12 years in search and rescue. He'd seen what happened when people gave up their agency, when they stopped thinking for themselves. He'd pulled bodies out of avalanche zones because someone followed their friend instead of trusting their own instincts. He'd watched people die because they let fear or pride or desperation override common sense. Free will, messy and painful as it was, mattered. No, he said. The thing's smile turned cold. Then you'll wander until you have no choice. The song never stops. Marcus, it will dig into your brain, burrow into your thoughts. Days from now, weeks from now, you'll hear it in your sleep, and eventually, you'll walk back here. They always do. We'll see about that. Marcus pulled out his phone, turned up the music as loud as it would go. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out an air horn. He pressed the button. The blast was deafening, echoing off the rocks. The figures around the cave flinched, stumbling back. The singing faltered, disrupted by the competing noise. Sarah joined in, setting off her own air horn, then flares, tossing them toward the cave entrance. Light and sound, overwhelming the darkness and the singing. The figures retreated, backing toward the cave. They moved in jerky, uncoordinated ways now. Whatever controlled them was struggling to maintain cohesion against the assault of noise and light. It's working, Sarah shouted. But Marcus saw the problem. They couldn't keep this up forever. Eventually, the flares would burn out, the air horns would run empty, and then the singing would return, stronger than ever. They needed a permanent solution. The cave, Marcus said. We need to collapse it, seal this thing inside. How? Good question. They didn't have explosives. Even if they did, Marcus wasn't sure it would work. This thing seemed more idea than physical being. Could you trap an idea? But maybe you could slow it down. Cut off its access to the surface. Make it harder for it to reach out and call to people. There, Sarah pointed. Above the cave entrance, a massive boulder was wedged between two rock faces. It looked unstable, like it had been there for centuries but could come loose with the right pressure. If we can move that boulder, it'll take out the entrance. Maybe the whole cave system. Marcus studied it. But we'd need leverage, ropes, pulleys, something. Or we use what we have. Sarah was already pulling rope from her pack. We tie this off, run it around that tree, use the truck as a winch. It was insane. It might not work. But it was the only idea they had. They worked fast, the air horns still blasting, flares still burning. The figures had retreated into the cave now, but Marcus could see their eyes glowing in the darkness, watching, waiting. Sarah ran the rope back down the trail to where they'd left the truck. Marcus secured the other end around the boulder, using every knot he'd learned in 12 years of mountain rescue. His hands were numb with cold, shaking with adrenaline, but he kept working. Finally, it was ready. Marcus, get clear. Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. He scrambled down from the rock face, putting distance between himself and the cave. Go. The truck's engine revved. The rope went taut. For a long moment, nothing happened. The boulder didn't budge. Marcus thought it was going to fail, thought they'd just wasted time and equipment on a plan that couldn't work. Then, with a grinding crack, the boulder shifted. It moved 6 inches, then a foot. Then it was falling, 3 tons of rock dropping straight down onto the cave entrance. The impact was like thunder. Rock shattered, dust billowed out. Marcus threw his arms over his head as debris rained down. Behind him, he heard a sound like 1,000 voices screaming in unison, cut off suddenly as the entrance collapsed. Then silence. Well, not silence. Rain still fell. Wind still blew through the trees. But the singing was gone. That constant melody that had been scraping at the inside of Marcus's skull for 2 days, it was just gone. Did it work? Sarah peered beside him, covered in rock dust but unhurt. Marcus approached the collapsed entrance carefully. The boulder had done its job, bringing down the entire rock face. The cave entrance was buried under tons of rubble. Even if something tried to dig out from inside, it would take years. But was it enough? Or had they just made it angry? We should go, Marcus said. Now, they didn't run, but they moved fast. Down the mountain, back to the truck, not looking back. The forest felt different now, quieter, less oppressive, like something that had been holding its breath, had finally exhaled. They made it to the truck, got in, started the engine. Sarah drove, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Neither of them spoke until they were back on the main road, miles from Walker Creek. What do you think happened to them? Sarah asked quietly. The people in the cave. Marcus didn't answer, because he didn't know. Were they still alive in there? Trapped with whatever that thing was? Or had they died when the entrance collapsed? And which option was worse, death? Or being stuck in the darkness with that entity, singing forever? We should report this, Sarah said. Report what? That we illegally entered a closed area and dynamited a cave. We didn't use dynamite. You know what I mean. They drove in silence for a while. Marcus, Sarah said finally, do you think it's really gone? Or just contained? That was the question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Because Marcus didn't know. Maybe they'd stopped it. Maybe they'd just pissed it off. Maybe in a few months or years, the singing would start again, weaker but still there, still calling. Or maybe there were other caves, other entrances to whatever place that thing lived in. The singing darkness, the Ute elder had called it. Maybe what they'd sealed was just one mouth, and somewhere else in these vast mountains, another mouth was opening. I don't know, Marcus admitted. They reached civilization around 2 a.m. Sarah dropped him at his apartment. They sat in the truck for a moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. We did good tonight, Sarah said. Whatever happens next, we tried. We fought back. Yeah. Marcus opened the door. Sarah, thank you. For coming with me. For not thinking I was crazy. Oh, you're definitely crazy. But you were right. Someone had to do something. She smiled, tired but genuine. Get some sleep, Marcus. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But Marcus didn't sleep. He lay in bed, listening to the silence, and wondered if he'd ever be able to trust quiet again. Because now, he knew what could hide in the silence. What could be waiting, singing in frequencies just below human hearing, calling out to lonely people who desperately wanted to belong. The official report, when it came, was predictably useless. State police investigated the collapsed cave at Walker Creek, determined it was a natural rock slide triggered by heavy rain. No evidence of the missing Johnson family. Case remained open but inactive, filed away with hundreds of other unsolved disappearances in the wilderness. Williams never spoke about what happened that night in the parking lot. When Marcus ran into him at a county meeting 3 weeks later, the sheriff gave him a long look, nodded once, and walked away. Some things that Nod said were better left unspoken. Marcus went back to work, pulled hikers out of canyons, responded to emergencies, did his job. But he listened now, really listened, and sometimes, usually late at night when the wind was right, he thought he could hear it, faint, barely there, but persistent. The singing. Sarah found more accounts, not many, and scattered across decades, but they were there. A journal entry from 1897, a prospector describing strange music in the mountains. A news article from 1946, a family that vanished while camping. A police report from 1979, witnesses reporting seeing missing people standing in the forest, eyes wrong somehow. The singing darkness had been here for a long time, and it was patient. What do we do? Sarah asked him one evening, 6 months after Walker Creek. They were sitting in a bar in Denver, files spread between them. We can't watch every cave in the Rockies. Can't warn everyone who goes camping about some ancient entity that might steal their soul. No, Marcus agreed. We can't. So we just... What? Wait for it to happen again? We document. We research. We find others who've encountered this thing and survived. We build a database. Marcus sipped his beer. And when it does happen again, we're ready. We know what to look for. We know how to fight it. That's not much of a plan. It's what we've got. Sarah nodded slowly. All right. I'm in. But Marcus, we can't do this alone. We need help. Other people who've seen things, who understand that there are dangers in the wilderness beyond just nature. You know anyone like that? Maybe. I've been talking to people online. There's a community, small but dedicated. People who investigate unexplained disappearances, paranormal activity in remote areas. Some of them are cranks, but some. She pulled out her phone, showed him a website. Some of them have real information. Marcus looked at the screen. Stories, photos, testimony from witnesses. Missing people, strange phenomena, things that didn't fit into official explanations. A whole network of people trying to understand what lurked in the places civilization hadn't quite reached. Okay, he said, let's talk to them. That was 2 years ago. Since then, Marcus and Sarah had become part of something bigger, a loose organization of researchers, investigators, former law enforcement, and survivors, people who'd encountered things in the wilderness that shouldn't exist but did. They shared information, compared notes, tried to identify patterns, and they'd found more cases, not just in Colorado, similar phenomena in Oregon, Montana, Washington, different manifestations, different methods, but the same basic pattern. Something old, something that predated human civilization, reaching out from deep places to take people. The singing darkness was just one entity among many. Some of them could be fought, some could be avoided, and some you just had to seal away and hope the seal held. Marcus still worked search and rescue, still pulled people out of dangerous situations. But now, he also watched for signs, strange marks on trees, abandoned campsites with all the gear still there, reports of singing in the woods. When he found those signs, he acted. Sometimes that meant warning hikers away. Sometimes it meant sealing caves. Once, Memorably, it meant burning down a section of forest that had become infected with something that turned trees into collectors of human consciousness. The Forest Service hadn't been happy about that one, but Marcus slept better, knowing he was doing something, that he wasn't just accepting the official explanations and moving on, that when people walked into the wilderness and vanished, someone was paying attention. Someone was trying to understand. Someone was fighting back. He thought about the Johnson family sometimes. Robert and Jennifer, Emma and Tyler. Were they still in that sealed cave, singing in the darkness? Or had they been released somehow when the entrance collapsed? He didn't know, probably never would, but he'd learned something from them. From their disappearance and everything that followed, the wilderness wasn't empty. It had never been empty. And the things that lived in the deep places, the old things that remembered when mountains were young, they were still there. Still hungry. Still calling out to lonely humans who wandered too far from the light. You just had to know how to listen and how to fight back. 3 days after the Walker Creek incident, a hiker named Connor Blake had stopped at the ranger station where Marcus worked. He'd been camping up near the Wyoming border, he said. Beautiful area, pristine wilderness. But he'd heard something strange, singing, echoing through the canyons. It had drawn him in, made him want to follow it deeper into the backcountry. But Connor Blake was smart, or maybe just lucky. He'd recognized something was wrong, that the singing didn't sound quite right. So he'd packed up his camp and hiked out immediately, driving straight through the night to get away. I don't know what it was, Connor told Marcus, but I felt it in my bones. Something was trying to get inside my head, and I wasn't going to let it. Marcus had taken his statement, documented the location, added it to the growing database. Then he'd called Sarah. Northwest Wilderness area, he said. Near the border, it's active. How do you want to handle it? Same as before. We find the source, we seal it. And if there are people already taken? Marcus didn't have a good answer for that. Because the truth was, once you were taken, once you joined the chorus, he didn't know if you could be brought back. The transformation seemed complete, irreversible. But maybe they could stop new people from being taken. Maybe they could slow this thing down, limit its reach. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in the end, that's all any of them could do. Fight the darkness with whatever tools they had. Make noise against the silence. Shine light into the deep places. Because the alternative, accepting that these things existed and doing nothing that wasn't an option, not for Marcus, not anymore. He'd seen what happened when people didn't fight back, when they heard the song and walked willingly into the dark, when they gave up their will and their self and became part of something that promised unity but delivered only emptiness. The singing darkness was still out there. Maybe not at Walker Creek anymore, but somewhere. Always somewhere, patient and old and hungry. But Marcus Thompson was hunting it, and he wasn't alone. The wilderness was vast, but so was human stubbornness. So was the refusal to give up. So was the determination to protect others from threats they didn't even know existed. Marcus had spent 12 years in search and rescue before Walker Creek. He'd saved a lot of people in that time, pulled them out of crevasses and avalanche zones and roaring rivers. He'd been good at his job. Now he had a new job, a harder one, fighting things that shouldn't exist, but did. Sealing caves and burning forests and warning people away from places that called out in the night. It wasn't glamorous. There were no medals, no official recognition. Most people thought he was crazy. Hell, sometimes he thought he was crazy. But Sarah believed him, and the network believed him. And that was enough. Because somewhere in the mountains, maybe right now, someone was hearing a song. Someone was feeling that pull, that promise of belonging and understanding. Someone was walking toward the darkness, leaving their boots behind. And if Marcus and the others could get there in time, if they could make enough noise to drown out the singing, if they could seal one more entrance to the deep places, then maybe, just maybe, they could save that person. One person at a time, one cave at a time, fighting the singing darkness with flashlights and air horns and pure stubborn refusal to give up. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. And in the end, what else was there? You did what you could with what you had. You fought when you could fight. You saved who you could save. And you never, ever stopped listening, because the song was always there, waiting in the silence. And the only way to fight a song was with another song, louder, brighter, more human, the song of people who refused to be silenced. That's Marcus Thompson's story. That's what happened at Walker Creek in September 2 years ago. The official files say the Johnson family is still missing, presumed dead. The unofficial truth is more complicated. They're not dead, but they're not alive either. Not in any way that matters. They're singing, and somewhere in the Rockies, in a sealed cave beneath tons of rubble, that song continues. Fainter now, harder to hear. But still there, always there. Marcus Thompson checks on that cave every few months. Make sure the seal holds. Make sure the singing hasn't gotten louder. Make sure new marks haven't appeared on the surrounding trees. So far, the seal holds. So far, but he knows it's only a matter of time. These things are patient. They measure time in geological epochs, not human lifespans. What's a few years or decades to something that's been here since before the mountains rose? Eventually, it will find a way out, or it will find another way in. And when that happens, Marcus will be ready. Because that's the thing about fighting monsters. You never really win. You just keep fighting. Keep holding the line. Keep saving who you can save. And hope that's enough.